Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Stellar Foundation research on financial literacy. In this interview, we have Aura Tanner. Aura, can you introduce yourself and let everybody know what you do in the space?
Yes, hi, I'm Aura Tanner, and I have two companies. One is a nonprofit I co-founded called the AI Education Project, and that's where I developed a curricula to teach students from low-income areas about artificial intelligence. We ended up reaching 30,000 students in 9 states and 15 countries. And I more recently started another business called Black Unicorn Education, and I'm developing informal education resources to teach Black families, all families, but prioritizing Black families about emerging tech like AI, metaverse, blockchain, things like that.
Excellent, excellent. So I know that we talked about gamification and game-based learning. You know, when you came back and said there are two drastically different things. So can you kind of go through the differences and what they are?
Yes, and just a little bit also about my background. So I did design and develop educational games as part of my doctoral studies, which I'm finishing up in instructional technology. And the focus of my dissertation was game-based learning and game-based assessment. So gamification is when you take the elements or the components of games and basically use those as rewards for the student learning certain things. So that's things like points, badges, accomplishments, levels, leaderboards. There might be quests or challenges. And the main purpose for gamification is you're trying to motivate, you're trying to just engage the student to make it interesting so that they'll finish whatever it is you have. It might be a module, it might be something else. Game-based learning is where the entire learning itself takes place within the game. The game is the learning, and in order for the student to progress, they have to learn or understand and demonstrate the material. And so the benefits of the game-based learning, so let me back up. So with the gamification, I've heard it referred to as pouring chocolate over broccoli, because a lot of times gamification is used in things like, compliance training. Employees or people might not want to do it. Hey, let's make this fun. So they'll do it. And so that's one example. But with game-based learning, the students or the learners are actually able to be within a context of whatever that learning would take place. So if it's financial literacy, you can actually put them in the role of, the owner of a bank or someone who's the head of a supply chain, and then they would actually do the task that character would actually do. The research shows that when you use game-based learning, learners tend to persist and spend more time on the content. And when you're spending more time, therefore, more learning is taking place. And also, game-based learning is really great for complex things, such as, science, technology, and things like that. And the research also shows that within a game-based learning, students take more risk because you're able to fail or try things out, experiment, see what happens without it actually happening in real life. So that's some of it.
Excellent. So, all right, I guess it's a two-part question. In your opinion, based on your research, based on your experience, is there going to be one that would be better than the other in terms of, like, if we're talking about financial literacy, right? If we're looking through a financial literacy lens, is there going to be one that you would think that would be better than the other? First question. Second question would be, is there a way to actually integrate the two? And if so, like, what would that look like?
Yes. So for your first question, is one better than the other? It depends on your objectives and your goals. So if you have some existing content, or I already have this course or this training, and you want students or learners to engage with it, then the gamification, if done correctly, could work great, because you want to motivate them and incentivize them to go through your content that you already have. For the game-based learning, if you really want to change behavior, game-based learning is more for training, where you want them, to think differently, or I want them to start operating a certain way. Then the game-based learning is going to be a better one, but it just depends on your audience and what you're trying to achieve. I tend to go for the game-based learning, which it takes a bit longer to build it, and of course the cost, but I've built several different games that have been quite successful. One of them was on teaching people about the impacts of disinformation and deep fakes on democratic elections. That game has since gone on to be translated into 7 different languages, because it really shifted people's mindsets, because they took on the character of someone who was actually running for a campaign, and based on the different things they did in the game, they saw real time, this is how disinformation works, this is how it's impacting you. So they got a firsthand look, and because that they saw it happen again and again, they're like, oh, we have to now do it in this city, now let's do it in this country, now let's do it in that country. But I think because I've worked in space, I tend to go toward game-based learning, but both of them can be beneficial.
Okay. Yeah. So, because like I could see, so for the second question, so given that both could be beneficial, like how would you integrate the two, you think, in your opinion?
Integrating, I mean, you can have leaderboards, you can have points, scores. Some of the other features of game-based learning is there's a storyline or a narrative that drives the action of the game. So that's one of the main things. The students are able to track themselves, and they're getting a constant feedback loop. The gamification is more linear, where, okay, I finished this module on level 1. Now I'm rewarded by being able to shoot, space monsters. Oh, I did this. So the game-based learning is more involved, and I think having that storyline is really powerful, because you can embed other information into that storyline, and it's almost like the core game mechanic and the story become one. And so a good example is what is that game called? Assassin's Creed, I want to say, where
Assassin's Creed, yeah. Not sure what it is.
So lots of so lots of players have reported learning about world history, because you're within the context of that, and people have learned more playing that game than they did from taking a course at school. And it's memorable because you've actually experienced it.
So yeah, so is there like a word or a term whenever you integrate the two? I don't know, I'm asking. Because you're right, there are two different things. So it's like, okay, what's the word when you combine the two?
I don't know if there's a word, because mostly people who are in game-based learning like look down and frown upon gamification, because like I said, it's putting chocolate on top of broccoli, because it's almost seen as you're putting a carrot and kind of forcing people to learn something. But I know inside of game-based learning, there's a term for when you integrate the gameplay with the story, and that's called endogenous learning. So it's like you can't tell the difference, like what you're doing is actually what you would be doing in the story. But like I said, there can be points, there can be a leaderboard in game-based learning, throughout that. There can be stars, to show you, you can level up, you can have levels and all of that.
Yeah, so have you considered, I know I'm peppering you with questions. Have you considered how the metaverse, because like whenever you're talking about this, that essentially is what people are trying to build in the metaverse, right? Now, have you thought of a way in which you could do that from an educational perspective?
You mean to do this as far as the metaverse is concerned? Or?
Yeah, so the way I'm thinking about, so if you're familiar with the sandbox, right? Sandbox, you're creating games within the metaverse, right? And within those games, you can run around and you can collect coins, kind of like Mario Brothers and things like that. But some people are actually building storylines within there, right? So I think sandbox is the game-based learning aspect of it, right? The gamification is where you're actually collecting badges, you have leaderboards and things like that. So essentially, some of these games, some of these platforms, some of these metaverse platforms are already building it, but I don't think they know what they're building. I don't think they're actually building something that can create a true significant impact, to learning in a variety of different things. So, the way you explain it, you broke it down very well, and it's very, very interesting because that's what they're building. They just don't know it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what makes game-based learning is there is a learning objective. There is something you want the learner to do or achieve. There's a behavior you want to change. But also, like, a part of what I was doing was game-based assessment. So instead of, hey, write this paper or do this thing, let's create this game situation and put learners in there. And actually there are companies who have used this game-based assessment approach for interviews and getting into the companies, because it can show you to what degree, say, for instance, they know how to communicate with someone or teamwork. And so you can tell based on what level they get to or certain actions they take, how well they understand. So I could see in the metaverse, I can see it from both sides. I could see, like, the metaverse, you want it to be more open and make it seem like, oh, you can do what you want and go where you want in there, which is fine, being more exploratory. But I could also see, building, like you said, narrative storylines, and that could be used to educate people. And there is an education metaverse. It's called Ed3 DAO. And so they have built, different experiences in there. Like if you're learning biology or something, they actually go inside of, a cell or something like that. But it doesn't have a storyline. And so I think that's a totally different thing. It's almost like good video games have good storylines.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more you discuss it, it's kind of like, SimCity, if you remember that game, right? SimCity, you build houses and you raise a family and things like that. And you had natural disasters, and you had dinosaurs knocking down everything. So, like, in a way, as crazy as it sounds, it kind of taught people about, kids, about how real life situations, not with dinosaurs, but things like building the house, raising the family, and things like that. But then you also have games like Real Estate Tycoon, where you're building kind of like board games with Monopoly. People talk about all the time. That's how they learned about money, right? With Monopoly and the Game of Life and things like that. So whenever I'm thinking about digital, and I mean, not really digital inheritance, but when I think about financial literacy, different research topic. When I think about financial literacy, I think of, how can we create something similar to, so yeah, I think that, from a phased approach, and let me know if I'm off on this, so I might be backward, but the way I'm thinking about it is that you would think about the gamification piece first, of how you're going to gamify it, how you're going to incentivize people. You create the content, you create the, the education that you want them to learn, and then you build the game-based learning around that. Because, it's going to take you a long time to create the game-based learning platform. So people are going to be waiting for it to be built, right? But if you do the gamification first, they can be learning, on a platform while you're building it out. And then once you build it out, then you can take the content that they're learning, the badges they're earning, and then integrate it within the game-based learning platform. Does that make sense? Or do I have it backward?
Yeah, that's one way to do it. Like you said, starting with the gamification piece. There is another way where it's still game-based learning, because you can build a smaller game. So there are things called micro games, and those are games that take 5 minutes or less. And so like the game I built for the disinformation, I think it took it's probably like 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes to build that game. But they ended up expanding it out into a full-blown course. But it was kind of like a pick your own adventure. So you have the story, it's like a narrative-based game. And so then you come to, okay, here are the 3 choices. Which one are you going to do? You click which one you're going to do. And then that takes you down a certain path, and you can tell, it's like an adventure. But you could build, like you were talking about the real estate tycoon and Sims with the farming and building a house. Like I can imagine a game going back to the financial literacy and say like, say supply chain or blockchain, helping people understand it. Just taking something from real life and building off of that. So like a real example, but still making it fictitious. For instance, 1/3 of the food in the world is produced by small farmers, and a lot of them being women. However, there's like these, middlemen that come in and kind of get between them and getting paid, and they actually defraud these women. So the women end up staying poor. So I could see like a mystery game, like, oh, why is that happening? How can we help them get all their money? And then that shows you the necessity of a blockchain. Like, oh, hey, let's help put this farm, this small woman farmer on the blockchain, and then start, showing them the elements and how blockchain relates to finances. Like, hey, doing it this old way, this middle person is able to come and steal from this person. But with the blockchain, this is what happened. And that's just an idea I had off the top of my head. But yeah, you can create these small scenarios that help them understand in real life.
Okay. All right. So yeah, to kind of like add on to that, how to add on to that. So just for like, so basically, given that we're in the US, right? How could we create a game-based learning game to increase financial literacy using blockchain and stable coins? I'm not gonna say cryptocurrencies, but stable coins like USDC, USDT, in your opinion, you think?
I think anything that just put, like I said, with game-based learning, you can put students in different roles. So if they're put in certain, take on certain roles within the supply chain of, something that's happening in the world, and then they could learn a little bit about that through the game, but then have them taking real actions, within the game. Like, I don't know what those people would do in that thing, but whatever you do in the game, whatever you practice, that's what the students learn. So I had built another game called Chicken Collision. It was like a science game, but it was supposed to teach them about balance, students in middle school balance and unbalanced forces. But in that, I took something out of real life, which is how the US Air Force tries to find solutions for downed planes by birds, because birds like slam into windshields, and hundreds of planes are downed every year. So in that, they're like shooting chickens at windshields of planes, and then they're having to calculate and, what are the forces? Is this gonna, down this plane or not? So they actually, like, that's an actual job in the Air Force, but now they're doing it. And so they have to understand all the things that engineer or test person would have to do. But you could do the same thing with the stable coin, that type of thing as well. You would just build it in, like, what is it this person does.
Yeah, that's very interesting in that, with DeFi, decentralized finance, it's the same thing that banks do. That banks do in a centralized fashion. They lend out money, right, to people, and they expect that person to pay it back with interest. Same exact thing happens with DeFi. So if you were to create like a game-based learning game where you kind of create a DeFi bank, if you will,
Yes.
right? It's actually happening now. You create a DeFi bank, and that student is the banker, the decentralized banker, and you're using stable coin, and that you lend out stable coin to somebody, and then when somebody pays it back, then they have to pay back that 100 stable coin, so they pay back $110, right, in that stable coin. So yeah, if you can create a game like that where behind the scenes it actually gets written to the blockchain, and then you can educate people how it's getting written to the blockchain, you're actually killing two birds with one stone. You're teaching them financial literacy, but you're also teaching them how the blockchain works, and as well as how ledgers work, right? Ledgers are in the Web 2 space, ledgers are in the Web 3 space. So now you're teaching them accounting, right? So yeah, I actually love that. I actually love that option. So yeah, that could be one way in which you could do it. It's just a matter of, how long would that take? How long would something like that take to build? In like a mini game?
It depends. I mean, it depends on like, designers and developers are two different things. So I've done both, but the design is the person who's basically making the blueprint. So they're the ones who, what are the learning objectives, make sure it's aligned with the assessments, the game mechanics, they build the storyline, whatever. They hand that over to the developers, and graphic designers and all those people actually make it. I've done like the design piece for certain organizations because that's my area. I'm good at it. I could do some development, but yeah, but you map everything out. And if it's a mini game, like I said, it depends on your developers, but probably within a few months, you could have it if it's not too complex. And if you're not doing all these different things. But I like that idea a lot, because I was like, they could even, as kind of the training to get to that DeFi piece, it could be like a kind of a training version where they have to go through, this is how it works in current banking. And hey, if you're at the top of your class, you get to work at the DeFi bank. Because they should learn how regular banking works as well, so that the DeFi they can compare and contrast, or yeah, that would be very cool.
It would indeed.
I'm thinking, like, now I got the wheels turning, like,
right. Right.
Yeah, or even if you did it, this is another idea, if you did it as a kind of like an assessment, like if you already have material on say just regular, financial, and kind of a side by side, like it kind of, first they're doing DeFi, how would you do it here, and they're switching back and forth, but that might be too complicated for them, especially if they don't understand. But scratch that.
I actually think we're onto something, so anything else you would like to add?
No, I was just going to say, with the financial literacy, I know it's becoming more and more of a thing. I'm seeing like things just pop up. Like because I study all these things, but I saw a game, but it's more a simulation in-person game that someone had developed. I forgot what it was called, but they basically made a grade blockchain. So hey, if you put your grades on the blockchain, and having students work through that. But yeah, with the rise of just crypto, and there's a huge interest of students like in that area. And I've seen a lot, like I've talked to a lot of students over the past year, like they're seeing a lot of the rappers and singers and stuff who do have a lot of projects in the metaverse. And so they want to do it, like, hey, I want to be involved. So yeah, I think I found out about one. I think it was like Trillionaire, I think it was Trillionaire Thug or something, who had like making millions off these NFTs. I was like, I haven't heard of that person. So yeah, they're interested. So yeah, definitely an opportunity
Yeah,
to show them how it actually works.
Yeah, Snoop's in pretty much every metaverse. You know, so he's been doing a lot in terms of the metaverse. Him and Eminem did a thing because they both own Bored Apes. So they were at Ape Fest last year, where they actually, you know, put on a little concert, released a video where they actually turn into their apes and go into
Yeah, I saw that.
you know. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot in terms of the metaverse, and I think that, you know, yes, the rappers are talking about certain things, but if these, you know, people I don't want to call them kids, if these individuals, you know, kind of understand why they get into the metaverse, right? Then, you know, they can do it as well. You know, not everyone's going to be an athlete, not everyone's going to be an artist, right? But everyone can participate in the metaverse, right? Whether you're a metaverse landowner, whether you're a builder, whether you're a designer, right? Anyone can do it. So I think that, you know, that's one thing that is beneficial. And then also, you know, if they're talking about financial literacy, but the thing is, that's a big miss within the space. You know, we're not leveraging this tool to that's going to lead to financial literacy, that's going, like, talk about the importance of DeFi, where we can lend from each other. We don't have to depend on a bank. I don't care what your credit score is, right? We borrow from each other, you know, and that's an absolute game changer. But, you know, we're still waiting to see what the Fed and what the SEC and Mr. Gary Gensler, Chairman Gary Gensler, my fault, Chairman Gary Gensler, is going to do in terms of regulation. Because yes, we do need regulation, but I mean, I think that they need to be careful to completely understand the positive aspects of it, and not just look at, you know, what one person or a small number of people did that put a bad mark on the whole entire industry of this technology. So yeah, so there's a lot to be unpacked, a lot to learn in this space.
Yeah. And I was gonna say one thing about that, because something I've seen, like even with games, because most of the games I made were in the science space, except for the disinformation, that's more AI, but you have to build a good game experience. So what a lot of people do is, like, say you have a space like the metaverse, or even a game, they take the existing you know, structures and methods that they're doing in the current system, education system, which we know doesn't work, like just straight lecturing doesn't work. And they bring that into the game space. So I've seen games where it's like, basically like a lecture, but in a game, or it's really like a worksheet and they're calling it a game. So you have to really like leverage the affordances of these different technologies to build a good experience. And it should be different from what learners are experiencing in the traditional education space. Like I shouldn't feel the same in the metaverse that I do like in school. Like I should get to do something different.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you for your time. Aura, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Aura D. Tanner. Also my website, which is blackunicorneducation.com, or you can, and my email and other contact is on my website. So.
All right. Once again, thank you for your time, and everyone, until next time, thanks.
Thank you for inviting me. I had fun.
Absolutely.